Hey, welcome to Janktown. Will here, and thanks for joining us. Today's episode is one of my favorite kinds, where we take an older commander and we update it with a whole bunch of other cards that have come out since its release. Now, Wizards keeps printing product after product, which kind of makes it hard to keep up. Well, hopefully, videos like these will help you do just that. So thank you to everybody who voted in the poll, and today we will be covering partner commanders Trynn and Silvar. They were originally printed as secondary commanders back in Commander 2020 as part of the Ikoria Precons, and I won't read through both of them, you can see them on the screen, but of note, Trynn makes a human token on our end step as long as we've attacked, and Silvar is a sack outlet that grows and protects itself. Now this deck was recently piloted by one of Janktown's residents, Gerald, and if you want to see it in action, I provided a link in the description down below, or you can click it here. I will be doing a quick breakdown of our commanders, our deck's playstyles, then I'll give an overview of our deck's different themes, and a walkthrough of the specific card choices for each theme. So if this sounds good, I hope you can leave a like and subscribe, and if you want us to cover other older commanders and want us to like 2023-ize it or whatever, let us know in the comments down below. So with that, thank you everybody for your support, and let's get into it. So our commanders fill very different roles. Trynn is a support commander, and she makes us 1/1 humans, and no surprise, this is a deck focused on bringing out the power of humans. Silvar, though, is our finisher and sometimes our enabler. And we can definitely win in other ways, but it's just another potential win con sitting in the command zone. At its heart, though, this deck is a Mardu humans deck. Now, my honest opinion is, although feel free to disagree, is that I think Mardu is the best color for humans, and every time I've gone up against this deck, it's just like, it's been a problem. It's just threat after threat after threat, it's an absolute house. And a big reason for that is because I think it's so focused on what it does and what it does well, aggro. Our goal is to overwhelm our opponents with aggression. Playing aggro, though, is a very all-in strategy, and so if you play it, we have to mean it. This deck has the pieces to support that strategy, we just need to be unafraid to commit to the board and go full throttle. The biggest problem with committing to the board, though, is we might get blown out, and so alongside our aggressive playstyle, we need to be sure that we can restock, refuel, and get value to keep our foot on the gas pedal. So our 7 different themes consist of our usuals of ramp, removal, and draw, but I'll first walk us through card choices, and I may have been inspired by Lord of the Rings here, but our other themes of Light the Beacons, the Red Dawn, Protection, and something we like to call UBP or Utilities, Bombs, and Pets. Humans are at their deadliest when they have numbers, and so we need to light the beacons as we call for aid. Adeline, Call to Copper Quartz, and Horn of Gondor can all put a ton of bodies on the board. Adeline is the easiest to trigger since she triggers on any attack, but the ceiling on Call to Copper Quartz and Horn are also really high. Cemetery Protector and Hero of Precinct 1, meanwhile, are a pair of repeatable sources of token production, which depend on us playing spells. Cemetery Protector, ideally we'd want to be exiling a creature from a graveyard since, including our commanders, we are running 36 of them. Hanweir, Militia Captain, is a 2-drop that, if it survives to our upkeep, is probably easily flippable, in which case it transforms to Westvale Cult Leader, a potentially big beater that produces a human on our end step. Finally, Outlaw's Merriment. It's a 4-drop enchantment that produces hasty humans in our upkeep, so it's kind of like Bitter Blossom, except it just appears higher on our curve. But unlike Bitter Blossom though, the tokens it produces have haste, allowing us to immediately go on the attack. Now with a bunch of humans assembled, it's time to go to war. Now for Wrath, now for Ruin, and the Red Dawn. Thank you, King Theoden, for the words. General Kudro, his daughter Jarina, and Coppercoat Vanguard are all anthem effects, but what's neat is on top of that, they have side uses. General Kudro is a source of consistent graveyard hate as well as being conditional removal. Jarina brings with her more humans, and because we're running partner commanders, she counts every time either of them are cast. The Vanguard gives our team Ward 1, which is just a nice touch of protection. Now these are steady anthem effects, but we're also running ones that stack in Shared Animosity, Baragon, and Erkenbrand. So Shared Animosity can be a finisher if we're able to go wide, while both Baragon and Erkenbrand can trigger multiple times depending on how many humans enter the battlefield. Meaning if we have something like Adeline, those 3/1/1s that come in during combat will now trigger them thrice, giving our entire team a power boost of 3. So it's easy to see how this has the potential to snowball almost Craterhoof-like. However, beyond buffs, one of the most powerful combat abilities to have is Double Strike. Blade Historian essentially gives all of our attackers Double Strike, while newie gives our tokens Double Strike, but with the added bonus of being an impulse draw engine. Theoden is similar to Baragon and Erkenbrand in that he's dependent on a consistent stream of humans to come in to give multiple creatures Double Strike in a turn. So yeah, Double Strike is scary, but potentially even scarier is Haste. And Rising of the Day and Roar Resistance are a pair of enchantments that give haste. But on top of that, they can boost the power of our creatures. Rising of the Day buffs legendaries, and Roar of Resistance gives us the flexibility to pump our board with +2/+0 for 2. Now, a fun little quirk, although you probably might not use this all that much, is that it also triggers on our opponent's attacks. Meaning, we can technically pay the 2 on our opponent's turns to buff their creatures, at least the ones that are going at our opponents. Finally, there's Mikaeus the Lunarch, a mana sink and someone who can buff up our entire board permanently with +1/+1 counters. Going aggressive opens us up to getting blown out by removal, so ideally we have ways to protect our army, or at the very least our key pieces. Greaves and Boots, classic, and they grant the all-important haste which all aggro decks crave. Mother of Runes is a 1-drop human that gives protection, but also has the versatility to make a particularly big beater unblockable against a certain color. To protect our whole board though, Flawless Maneuver was recently reprinted in Commander Masters, and it's a free spell that grants our entire team indestructible. Selfless Glyph Weaver is a human that we can exile for a similar effect. Now I value this whole not needing to hold up mana for this effect, because since we're usually tapping out to stay aggressive, the worst is to just get caught with our pants down. However, Boros Charm is a really flexible card, and while odds are we'll be using it to grant our permanents indestructible, great against board wipes or protected removal, save our key enchantments, things like this, it does have other modes, like giving Double Strike to a potentially big unblocked attacker, or, for the memes, dealing 4 damage. Now I've seen many games where a huge attack actually just falls short by like 1 or 2 damage, so this is that little bit of reach that can just KO an opponent in a pinch. General's Enforcer protects our key pieces since a lot of our deck's most powerful effects are attached to legendary humans. Plus, in a pinch, it can create human tokens, although at a pretty mediocre rate. Finally, we're bringing in Chainer. We can discard to recast a creature from our graveyard, and we're running a pretty decent curve. Among creature spells, our curve is at about 3.1. Yeah, not bad. Another added bonus though is that Chainer gives haste if a creature wasn't cast from our hand, meaning whatever we reanimate, it'll come in with haste. Or our commanders, meaning Trynn or our finisher Silvar. UVP time! So since we're banking on some good token production, we're running Anointed Procession. It doubles up our tokens and also helps us double up our whole human trigger effects. In our utility belt though is Dihada Binder of Wills, a planeswalker that can grant lifelink and indestructible, good for protecting or even saving our life, and it also draws cards and ramps us. The best creatures in our deck are legendary, so this card actually does a ton of work. Also in the utility belt is Warhost's Frenzy. The +2/+0 is a means to just close out the game, but it also has the flexibility to restock our hand when we're getting wrathed. Key to the City grants unblockable to a creature while being a card draw in a pinch, although not the best mode. Still, anything is better than nothing. And Losarna Captain has a tap down effect whenever a human of ours enters the battlefield. So this in a way is kind of like an evasion of sorts. I know tapping down is temporary, but when we're pumping out humans, scary humans, our opponents are probably just hanging on to their blockers. So this helps us break through stalemates, and that upkeep ability of creating a human is also just some nice, useful incremental advantage. Now, beyond attacking, we can also do damage through Denethor. He has a refund ability, kind of just like incidental value, but he is a sack outlet that can drain opponents if we're somehow stalled out. And then there's Eomer, King of Rohan. He's a big-time double striker who cantrips because he has the monarchy, and he can blast someone's face or a giant creature if we have a big enough board. Now last on this theme, Serra Ascendant. We want to go aggro, and this is some of the best power to cost ratio in the entire game. It's a 1 mana value 6/6 human with evasion, and okay, so we'll never really win with this card. I've never really seen it stick around for too long. It always gets removed, but for the few turns that it is there, make it count. The risk of constantly running out threats though is running out of them. So draw makes sure we have enough gas until our final turn. Esper Sentinel, Black Market Connections, and Mangara the Diplomat are card draw engines that just accrue value over the course of the game. They just kind of sit there in the background, they're not that aggressive, and they just kind of do their thing. Timna and Shanid though force us to be more proactive to be able to draw cards. With Timna, we have to attack, and with Shanid, we have to play out our legendaries. They can trigger multiple times in one turn, which is great, but there are also times that they might just stall, depending on the situation. Since we're in Mardu though, one thing we're really good at is seeing things die. And so Skull Clamp, Garna, Morbid Opportunist, Species Specialist, and Phyrexian Vivisector all give us card advantage for when creatures die. Skull Clamp, well, it's insane in any deck that runs tokens. That's a given, but both Garna and Species Specialist are pretty ridiculous too in their own right, especially since they don't have that once a turn clause that the Opportunist has. And remember, we have a sack outlet sitting in the command zone, so with Garna we'll have the flexibility if we want card draw, which we'll usually want, but sometimes we'll need the ping damage to just give us that extra reach. Last are a trio of burst spells. Pact of the Serpent restocks our hand after we've played out a bunch of our humans. Disciple of Bolas draws us a bunch if we sacrifice the fatty creature, something that we've fattened up from our Anthem effects. And Mask of Grizzlebrand is like reverse Disciple of Bolas. I mean, flying and lifelink is nice, sure, but it's being able to sack a big creature to get a bunch of cards is the thing. The equip tree kind of sounds steep on the surface, but think of it as just like an alternate Skull Clamp. And because we've dedicated so many cards to being aggressive, this deck's main way of removal is player removal. But that said, we do run Anguished Unmaking as our sole removal spell to help us out in a pinch. So I kind of find this interesting, and I think it's a good perspective to have, especially seeing the difference between, let's say, a player like Gerald versus, say, a player like me, where I'm usually more of a reactive kind of player. I'm kind of more grounded in my control roots, whereas this deck is really built to like embody that proactive, aggressive playstyle. So neither is right or wrong. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but it's just really how you build your deck really dictates how you should be playing it. And so with this, it's focused, it's efficient. You can't be scared when you're piloting this deck, right? You gotta go for it. Fast, furious, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, you know, stuff like that. Last theme is ramp, and it's more than just staples. Yeah, Soul Ring, Signet, Bauble, yeah, we know that. But we don't just have talismans or more signets. Scholar of New Horizons is a land ramp creature, which is kind of like a repeatable loyal warhound when you think about it. And Prosperous Partnership immediately puts bodies on the board, which we can tap to help us create treasures. Alternatively, these bodies can carry swords, and Dowsing Dagger and Sword of Feast and Famine are ways to ramp while staying aggressive. Speaking of being aggressive, Captain Lannery Storm and Professional Facebreaker both want us to go in the red to be able to create treasures. Urza's Incubator is a way to curve down our 4-drop creatures into 2, maybe 3, depending on the pips. It's just a good way to be able to vomit creatures out onto the battlefield, you know, get those human triggers and just really start pressuring the board. Lastly, a couple of broken cards. Pitiless Plunderer is just a broken treasure maker, especially when you have sack outlets. And the infamous Jessica's Will. Now, this card's just value, too much value, I think, sometimes. But, you know, it's great. Run it, get that W. And that is Trynn Silvar updated for 2023, or at least mid-2023. Thank you to everybody who voted in the poll. We will be coming out with more videos soon. I just don't quite know yet about what. I am eyeing Ariat, so fingers crossed that we'll get somewhere with that. Until next time though, stay inspired friends, and I'll see you soon.